welcome to this edition of Power 5 Picks. I'm Drew Goldfarb, and in this series, we'll be taking a look at games across each of the Power 5 conferences and giving you our betting picks. Our experts and I will each have a budget of $100 a week. We could bet it on the spread or on the money line for each of our featured games. We have to bet the full $100 every week, and we have to bet on each of the 5 contests. For this show, I'm joined by Taylor Smith and Jim Baviglia. Week 3 saw a number of upsets, some bad beats, mostly impacting Taylor and me. Week 4 offers up some incredible matchups, possibly the 3 biggest games of the season so far, all lined up for this week. Let's begin with the matchup we're assigning to the ACC for the week. ACC adjacent Notre Dame heading down to Georgia to take on the Bulldogs. Fighting Irish ranked number 7 in the nation, UGA number 3. Bulldogs favored to win by 14 points with a minus 115 spread payout on the UGA side, minus 105 on the Notre Dame side of the spread. Georgia a minus 600 money line favorite compared to Notre Dame at plus 450. Jim, get us started with your pick here.
Yeah, welcome to the show, Notre Dame. The first time we've had a chance to talk about them. And, I looked for trends here, and it's interesting. I looked for Notre Dame as an underdog. They have only been an underdog once in the last 2 years. I found that a little hard to believe, and they won that game. They beat Michigan in that game. Very similar teams, I think. Georgia and Notre Dame, they both have the solid quarterbacks that don't make a lot of mistakes. Ian Book for Notre Dame, Jake Fromm for Georgia. I think Georgia might have more explosive players, and the game is in Georgia. However, at some point, I feel like Notre Dame, I know they've been rough in the bowl games against these top teams, but I think the regular season is a different animal. You don't have that long preparation. Games kind of sneak up on people. And I feel like at some point, Notre Dame just has to step up and really say, okay, this is our time to win one of these games. I just love the value on the money line in this. So I'm not super confident about it. I'm only going to put $15 on it, but I'm going to pick Notre Dame plus 450 on the money line to beat Georgia outright.
Taylor, what about you?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting with the value, but I think I'm going to take the more risk-averse approach, which is just Notre Dame to cover the spread. Georgia's just a shockingly huge favorite here. I don't really understand that. I think there is bias involved, of course, with the SEC, but Notre Dame's a good team. The rankings suggest they should be comparable. Obviously, midseason rankings can be taken with a grain of salt, but neither team's really played anyone to this point. I think Notre Dame does have enough talent to at least keep the game close. 14 points is just a big spread for a team that does have, decent talent up and down the roster. So not super confident here. Anything can happen. Obviously, I'm only putting 10 on it, but I'm taking Notre Dame to cover the spread.
So we're going to get this show off with 3 different picks because I'm going to take Georgia to cover the spread just for $10. Bulldogs have beaten Vanderbilt, Murray State, and Arkansas State to this point. Not exactly a murderer's row of opponents. And in fact, if it weren't for this week's game against Notre Dame, UGA would have one of the softest schedules of any team competing for a spot in the college football playoff this year. But I digress. Georgia's a strong team, just as tested as their Notre Dame opponents are this week by any stretch. The Fighting Irish have only played 2 games thus far, with wins over Louisville and New Mexico. UGA's defense is the reason that I like Georgia to win this game. They allow under 250 yards of offense per contest to their opponent. Even against lackluster opponents, the Irish defense gives up over 50% more than that. I considered going straight money lines this whole week after all the bad beats that I ended up getting last week, but there's no fun in that. Georgia to cover, $10 on it. The spread is way too wide between top 10 teams for me to put any more money on this game than that. I could see Notre Dame picking up a win or at least keeping it close and not letting Georgia cover the spread, but the Fighting Irish have burned me so many times when I go, oh no, I think that they're back. I can't pick them. UGA to cover the spread. UGA an SEC school, of course, and we've got another big game in the Southeastern Conference to count as our SEC pick for the week. Auburn ranked 8th in the nation, sitting at 3-0. Texas A&M ranked 17th. They're 2-1 on the year. It's the first in-conference game of the season for both teams, and the Aggies are the 4-point favorites in this one. Back to spread payout odds of minus 110 on either side here. Texas A&M carries a minus 185 money line payout odds there, while the Tigers are plus 160 underdogs. Taylor, who do you like for this matchup?
So A&M got me that nice backdoor cover against Clemson, but they still didn't look too great that day. They didn't look great last week, despite the final score against Lamar. Auburn, of course, picked up that big win against Oregon back in week 1. they've had good success at Kyle Field over the last handful of years since A&M joined the conference. I do think there's value on Auburn at plus 160 on the money line, but again, I'm trying to play it safe a little bit this week. I'm only taking Auburn to cover the 4-point spread, and I'm putting $20 on it. Easy for me to say.
Auburn's 1-0 in Texas this season, beating Oregon to open the year. The Tigers have also beaten Tulane and Kent State. The Aggies, meanwhile, have dominant wins over Texas State and Lamar. And then they have a 14-point loss to Clemson. College Station is a difficult place to play for visitors, so I get not being overly confident in true freshman Bo Nix to be able to quarterback the Tigers to a dominant win. But I don't see the Aggies running away with this one. And in fact, I'd lean towards taking Auburn to win straight up. Like Taylor, I was torn between taking Auburn +4 and taking Auburn straight up to win. And I've decided to go with the Tigers on the money line for $20. Go big or go home. I like those odds on this one, trying to make up some of the losses I had last week. Jim, how are you betting on this one?
Well, we've got two games where we all have three different picks because I'm going to go with Texas A&M in this one. You mentioned the bad beats. This was a terrible beat for me when Bo Nix drove down the field making like 9 fourth downs to beat Oregon in week 1 of the season. So hopefully that's not weighing on my pick here. But he's still only completing 52% of his passes, and the two opponents after Oregon were lackluster. Texas A&M, in Clemson feels like a notch above, and they gave, Trevor Lawrence some issues. He turned the ball over a couple times. I feel like they have a good defense. I feel like there's a revenge factor. Auburn's beaten them the last 2 games, and I think Texas A&M wants to prove that they're a top team here. And I think Auburn kind of skated against Oregon with that last drive. I don't think they're going to do it again. I think in College Station, I'm going with the Aggies, and I'm going to go -4, and I'm going to bet $25 on that.
How about another major in-conference clash between ranked opponents? Michigan Wolverines number 11 in the nation, Wisconsin number 13. I told you this was a great week for college football matchups. Both teams 2-0. The Badgers favored by 3.5 at home. Spread pays out at -115 for Wisconsin to cover, -105 to take Michigan plus the points. It's -170 money line odds here for the favorite, and Wolverines +150 on the money line to win straight up. I'm up first for this one. The Badgers have outscored their 2 opponents this season a combined 110-0. It's some New England Patriots versus Miami Dolphins caliber stuff there. But it's also because Wisconsin played USF and Central Michigan in those games, which are also referred to as the Miami Dolphins of the college football world, at least in this sentence. The Wolverines have a win over Middle Tennessee in week 1 and a not loss in week 2 against Army, where Michigan picked up the W 24-21 in double overtime. What makes me nervous about Michigan is their offensive numbers are really below average for a team that's played MTSU and Army. The Black Knights are a good defensive team, but MTSU is just not. I've got to take the Badgers here. I'm going to do it on the spread. I'm going to do it for $20. Jim, what's your pick? Are we getting any kind of, thinking on the same plane here, or what's going on here?
You and I, anyway, are in total agreement on this game. You tried to talk me out of these short lines, going with the line. Sometimes you want me to do the money line, but I have a feeling this could be a sloppy game, a low-scoring game, and those 3.5 points could be a lot one way or the other. Michigan getting Dorian Jones back for the first time this year. He's their best playmaker at wideout, so that's a boost for them. But Michigan has been loose with the football. Wisconsin is an opportunistic defense. I think Wisconsin's passing game is a little better than it's been in the past with Jack Cohn. One concern is that Michigan, Shea Patterson didn't pass much against them last year, but he ran for 90 yards against Wisconsin. So they're going to have to contain him. I really feel like this is a clash that goes down to the final possession of the game, a turnover, something like that. So I feel good taking the points here. So I'm going to go with Wisconsin plus the 3.5, also at $20.
So you're going to take Wisconsin to cover the 3.5?
To cover, yes. To cover the 3.5. Yes.
Just want to make sure. Taylor, where are you going? We're actually unanimous so far. Can you make it 3 for 3? Are you going Wisconsin to cover?
Yeah. So this game feels horrible. This was the hardest game, I thought. I'm going to side with you guys, though, and take Wisconsin. They're at home. Michigan obviously almost lost a game to Army, which is obviously bad. Wisconsin's defense has looked good. It was kind of a question mark coming into the season. Obviously, they've played to nobody, but allowing 0 points through 2 games is still impressive, I think. Michigan's offense has actually moved the ball okay. They've just kind of been undone by dumb penalties and badly timed turnovers. So I do think there's some value at plus 150 on the money line for Michigan, but the theme of the week is playing it safe. I think the safe pick is Wisconsin. I'll take them to cover. I'll put 15 bucks on it.
Let's stay with the in-conference matchups as Texas hosts Oklahoma State in the Big 12. Texas has one loss, but is ranked number 12 in the nation, while OK State is 3-0 and unranked. Longhorns favored by 5 points, with each side paying out at minus 110. UT a minus 200 favorite on the money line. Cowboys, meanwhile, coming at plus 170 on the money line. Taylor, how are you betting on the matchup?
Oklahoma State hasn't played anybody. Texas obviously lost that tough game against an LSU team that looks very legitimate. There's not much value in Texas at minus 200. I do like that they're at home. I think they're a legitimately decent team. I think they can contend with Oklahoma for the conference. So I like them against the spread here at home. I'll put 25 bucks on it, which is a little bit more confidence that I wanted to put on it, but you got to spend the money, I guess.
And I think you're on the right thought process here, too. Texas looked pretty good, at least offensively, against LSU a couple weeks ago. Oklahoma State's offense ranks among the best in the nation, and they've got a good defense, at least by Big 12 standards. However, all of those statistics have come against bad teams. They beat Oregon State, McNeese, and Tulsa to open the year and are yet to be tested. Sam Ehlinger has thrown for 11 touchdowns and 0 interceptions so far this season, with a QB rating of 177.3 and a QBR that puts him in the top 10 in the nation. He's completed nearly 75% of his pass attempts on the year as well, and it's possible Oklahoma State has rebounded from last year's disaster of a year, but they haven't proven anything yet. Texas to cover, I'm putting $30 on it this week. This is my biggest wager of the week. Jim, what do you got?
I'm going the other way. I'm going with Oklahoma State. I was really, yes, LSU is a legitimate team, but Texas pass defense really scares me. And Oklahoma State, they have the leading receiver in the nation, Tylan Wallace. They have the leading rusher in the nation, in Chuba Hubbard. I think it's a shootout. I don't think Oklahoma State probably slows down Texas either. But I just feel like Oklahoma State has won this game in the last 4 years, and Texas, for whatever reason, has a hard time out of the gate. I could see them stumbling again and maybe picking up momentum as the year goes on. So I'm going to go with Oklahoma State on the money line plus the 170, and I'm going to do it for $15.
Wrapping up with the Pac-12, the Washington Huskies coming off a blowout win over Hawaii. A rough Week 2 loss to Cal as the Huskies near the bottom of the top 25, while their Week 4 opponent BYU just took down USC in Week 3. Cougars are unranked but have received votes in the latest AP and coaches polls. Huskies favored by 5.5 points with a minus 115 spread payout on the Washington side, minus 105 on the Brigham Young side. BYU a plus 170 moneyline underdog. Washington a minus 200 moneyline favorite. Jim, will the Cougars knock another Pac-12 team out of the top 25 rankings this week?
I give BYU credit. I mean, they've probably played the best schedule in the nation so far. Utah, Tennessee, and USC. I mean, no real, lousy teams there, all top Power 5 type teams, and they go right back into it. Well, with Washington, the concern is maybe they get a little bit worn down after all that. Washington kind of rested up with an easy game last week. Jacob Eason has played well. Brigham Young's run defense has been shaky, which is a concern. I think Washington can really control the ball here. And BYU, even though they beat USC overall, they're 2-5 against the spread their last 7 games against Pac-10 teams, 1-3 at home, I believe. So all that kind of points me towards Washington, and I feel pretty confident about it. I'm going to go with Washington minus the 5.5, and I'm going to put $25 on it.
Taylor?
That makes me feel good because I have 30 bucks left. I have to put it somewhere, and it's all in Washington. Like you said, BYU, I think, could be a little bit tired after beating USC last week. Washington maybe figured some things out a little bit against Hawaii. Washington's one loss was kind of a fluky thing with big weather delays against Cal anyway. I think they are still one of the best teams in the conference, so it's my biggest bet of the week, but I'm taking Washington to cover.
I picked against the Huskies covering the spread a week ago, so I'm not going to make that same mistake twice. BYU lost to Utah in Week 1, bounced back for a double overtime win in Week 2 against Tennessee, and edged out USC in overtime in Week 3. Washington has a 1-point loss to Cal that was sandwiched between blowout wins over Eastern Washington and Hawaii. We know the weather issues that happened during Washington's one loss. And the fact that BYU needed double overtime to take down Tennessee, the three of us, with the guys that we could just find walking out of our respective buildings, could probably take Tennessee to double overtime this year. it's fair to think the Cougars are sneaky this year, but I'm taking the Huskies to cover the spread, and I'm putting $20 on it. So we are unanimous on that game, which is good to see in a week where we disagreed in so many spots. Good to end with a nice unanimous choice. That'll do it for this edition of Power 5 Picks. Make sure to check back next week where we'll have another full slate of games and another full plate of picks. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel, and let us know which bets you'd take for this week's games down in the comments below, as well as what games you'd like to see us cover in coming weeks. For Jim Bavili and Taylor Smith, I'm Drew Goldfarb. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.